What's quaking, people? Counter Quick here, coming at you with my reaction to Sabaton History 30. Alright guys, I'm excited about this one. This was donated for and recommended to me by Draconic Afterlife. Guys, if you want me to react to something on YouTube, there's a link down below for donations. A $10 donation gets you a dedicated YouTube video just like this one. Alright, this is Sabaton History. I love these. Sabaton's great. I love their historical content. And I love this channel they do. I love the fact that they go through all their songs and they have like war history or military history content, and they make like videos about the actual historical inspiration for the song. It's really cool. This one is about Stalingrad, and it's just World War II. That's the whole subject. So let's not waste any more time, guys. Let's jump right into this. This is Sabaton History 30.
I'm Indy Nidell.
This is Hungover Per, and this is Sabaton History.
All right.
The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the biggest and most important battles in history.
And our lyrics to the song Stalingrad is actually based on a Russian soldier's diary.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Summer 1942, Case Blue. It was to be the decisive German offensive that sealed the defeat and collapse of the Soviet Union. Army Group South would descend the Donetsk corridor towards the city of Stalingrad on the Volga River to protect the northern flank of the forces pushing towards the Caucasus oil fields. Adolf Hitler had, however, made the decision that instead of bypassing the city, Stalingrad itself was an objective and was to be taken by storm. Capturing Stalingrad would, in fact, not only destroy a major industrial hub, but also block Soviet shipping coming up the Volga. August 23, 1942, the forces of the German Sixth Army under General Friedrich Paulus entered the city. The Soviet reinforcements being rushed there were greeted from afar by explosions and pillars of smoke. Even the darkest night was illuminated by the incendiary bombs that turned the once beautiful city into an inferno of burning ruins. Still, day and night, the ferries poured men, tanks, and supplies over the Volga to keep the city in Soviet hands. For the men on those ferry boats, there was no going back, for neither the dive-bombing German Stukas above them, nor the merciless and ever-watchful eyes Stalin's commissars of the NKVD gave them any choice. They would push the invaders back, or they would die trying. Stavka, Red Army Command, had tasked its 62nd Army under Lieutenant General Vasily Chuikov to hold on to the city that Stalin considered the symbolic birthplace of the Bolshevik Revolution, whatever the cost. Stalin's orders were law. We shall never surrender the city of our birth. Let us barricade every street. Let us transform every district, every block, every building into an impregnable fortress.
Wow.
Ironically, in that task, they were helped by the German Luftwaffe, as its massive carpet bombing campaign had turned the city into a maze of ruins and rubble. Every cellar could be turned into a bunker, every collapsed factory into a possible strongpoint.
Wow.
And Chuikov's tactic was hugging the enemy. They would be so close to the Germans that they could not be targeted by artillery. In the wreckage, men caked in dirt, dust, and blood ran into each other, fighting mercilessly with guns, hand grenades, and bayonets. Small platoons of Soviet submachine gunners swarmed through the ruins, trying to outflank their enemy, while German stormtroops rushed from cover to cover under the stutter of machine guns. Chuikov called it the Stalingrad Academy of Street Fighting.
So, like, it's one thing that I think Americans take for granted, especially like people who, like, if you, since we're on the internet age now, where you can have people can just communicate over the internet instantly. The devastation for people who live in like in the Ukraine, you know, just I think it was this last year. We don't like we've been involved in wars like my entire lifetime, right? But we haven't had to fight a war on our soil. And there's a lot of like geographical reasons for that and whatnot, and political or in logistical reasons for that. But we take war for granted. I feel like, you know, where it's like, oh yeah, it's war, but it's over there. We don't see it. It's fought over there. Well, it's fought in somebody's house. You know what I mean? It's fought in someone's yard. It's not just fought in wastelands. A lot of times they're over here now actually leveling cities. You know, and there's these people's like homes. Cities people live in are being like overrun by soldiers, and wars are being fought, man. It's devastation, you know.
soldiers lost track of time and space in the pulverized wasteland. Once a thriving city where hundreds of thousands of people lived in multi-story buildings.
See?
Traps and ambushes were omnipresent. The Germans could, for example, hold the first and third floors of a building, while the Soviets still occupied the second. One mistake, or one step too far into the open, and that was it. Soviet snipers, marksmen and hunters from the Soviet Union's eastern regions lay camouflaged in the rubble, killing Germans with extraordinary precision. Casualty rates among German officers rose to unprecedented levels, as their life expectancy at the front was often just a few hours.
Wow.
It was an extremely draining way of conducting war, both mentally and physically. No sleep was granted, as every night was illuminated by flares and harassing fire. This was not the warfare to which the Germans were accustomed. No open battlefield maneuvers, no blitzkrieg-style advances. Forced to keep their heads down, they called it Rattenkrieg, the war of rats. For the men fighting in the city, this was not about ideology or war aims, but about simple survival. And for the Soviets, survival meant killing as many Germans as possible. But the German Sixth Army did not just consist of Germans, but also Austrians, Italians, Hungarians, Romanians, Croats, and indeed Russians known as Hiwis. They were among the most tenacious fighters, knowing that falling into Soviet hands was, for them, a sentence worse than death. The communist regime had barely even any pity left for its own men, or the women and children still trapped between the two armies. During the final phase of the September battles, the Germans still made progress. The party headquarters of Stalingrad might have fallen on the 26th, but the rest of the city did not. Chuikov's credo that every man had to become a stone of the city was making a difference. For the Germans, attacking the Red Square, the Red October worker settlements, or the Barikadi gun factory was like attacking a fortress of steel and concrete. The main railway station changed sides 15 times in just 5 days.
Wow.
Hitler was visibly frustrated over the stubborn Soviet resistance and the mounting casualties. General Paulus had promised him many times that the fall of the city was just a few days away. How could the Sixth Army, one of the largest and strongest, not break the Soviets? The German censors at home tried their best to hide the fact that this was a battle of attrition, that the Germans might actually lose. Nervousness swept through the Fuhrer's headquarters. Throughout October, the fight for the northern industrial sector and the heights of the Mamayev Kurgan continued, but supplies and reserves were running dangerously low. The field hospitals within Stalingrad and on the banks of the Volga were packed with wounded as far as the eye could see. Stalin himself met with the Stavka to discuss coming Soviet counterstroke, codenamed Operation Uranus. While the city's defenders would continue holding out, the offensive would be directed against the overstretched German lines outside the city, where, far away from the street-to-street fighting, the forces guarding the steppes and along the bends of the River Don fought in the monotony of trench warfare. The Romanian Fourth Army was there, but captured prisoners had revealed to the Soviets they had nearly zero anti-tank weapons. So, while the Germans poured more and more men into the city, Stalin was determined to turn it into a trap. By November, its fate was still uncertain, but the German soldiers began to realize they would have to stay there through the brutal Russian winter. And after Hitler once again broadcast near victory on the radio on the 8th, the temperatures fell dramatically the following day. On November 19th, Soviet stockpiling came to an end. Over 1 million men had been assembled in the rain and frost. Operation Uranus began. Heavy artillery shells and shrieking Katyusha rockets crashed into the Romanian lines. Successfully fighting off the first waves, they eventually broke as the massive T-34 tanks smashed through their lines unchallenged. Paulus, putting his trust in the Führer's calculations, had totally failed to prepare for such a possibility. No mobile tank force was available to prevent the disaster taking place on his flanks. The Axis forces outside the city were now threatened from 3 sides. Suddenly, the whole German force on the southern Don front was threatened with being cut off. Pulling back was the only option. On Sunday, November 22nd, the news broke in Hitler's headquarters. Stalingrad surrounded, Russians approaching, Romanians retreating. First, the encircled German forces perceived this Kessel, as they called it, simply as temporary. Now forced to hold out until they could be relieved, they reversed the roles. True to the rules of the Stalingrad Academy of Street Fighting, they formed a defensive hedgehog, turning their surroundings into defenses. But in December, the Russian winter was tightening its grip around the city, as was the Soviet snare. While many Germans still clung to the promise, hold on, the Fuhrer will get you out, others began to lose faith. The combat fatigue, the malnutrition, the sleeplessness took a heavy toll on the soldiers. Every tank lost was irreplaceable. Shells were getting fewer and fewer, and fighting strength deteriorated rapidly, as did all hope of making it out alive. The Sixth Army could not simply be supplied by an air bridge, as there were neither enough planes nor fuel available. And what was supposed to be the saving grace that was Operation Winterstorm by Field Marshal von Manstein was halted 40 miles in front of the Kessel by strong Soviet opposition. The Symphony of Stalingrad spoke of incoming doom. The NKVD played tango music and propaganda from German communists through the loudspeakers as Katyusha rockets screeched overhead. German rations were cut to a third, in the hope that they would hold out until 1943. Cases of self-inflicted wounds and desertions increased. Despite the rumors that the Soviets would kill every prisoner, many had just simply had enough. Rations then became so small, soldiers were expected to live and fight off a small slice of black bread a day and whatever they could find for their soup. Draft animals were slaughtered, dogs skinned. Already weakened by starvation, thousands were hit by disease and frostbite. The overcrowded field hospitals were a gruesome sight of death and open wounds.
This is what I mean by them being unmanaged or undermanaged.
Huddled together in cellars,
one of the falls of
in tattered gray overcoats,
Nazi forces.
And with swollen, frozen limbs, the army was disintegrating day by day. There was not a single healthy man left in the Kessel. But Paulus refused to surrender, even as his army was pushed into the smallest corner of the city. Hitler had by now given up on the Sixth Army, ordering Paulus to hold out like the Spartans at Thermopylae and die for Germany's future. According to him, the Sixth Army had fulfilled its historical contribution to the greatest passage in German history. The city was to be its grave. Soviet General Rokossovsky had the honor of finishing the job. Soviet tanks, unchallenged by useless anti-tank guns without shells, crushed all resistance under their tracks. Many German officers shot themselves, while others made heroic last stands. On January 31st, Soviet soldiers cleared out the last cellars and dugouts with grenades and flamethrowers in the city center before breaking into Paulus's command post. Over 90,000 men were taken captive, the remnants of the mighty Sixth Army. But these were pitiful remnants of men, starved, weak, sick, limping and shuffling towards the snow-clad steppe. Most of them did not survive the marches to the camps, and many were shot along the way. The Soviets proclaimed, "After Stalingrad, we shall give no quarter." They didn't. With upwards of 2 million casualties, or perhaps more, it was the bloodiest battle of the entire war, and the largest with over 2 million involved at the time of the counteroffensive. It wasn't just a loss for the Axis powers or for Germany. In many ways, it was the loss. The initiative of the war, after a year of Axis gains, had shifted in the USSR's favor. Germany had lost an entire army, and their European allies, save Finland, had been broken. It is hard to overestimate the significance of the Soviet victory at Stalingrad, one of the major turning points in military history. Alan Brooke, British Chief of Staff, said this: "I felt Russia could never hold. Caucasus was bound to be penetrated. Abadan, our Achilles heel, would be captured with the consequent collapse of the Middle East, India, etc. after Russia's defeat, how are we to handle the German land and air forces liberated? England would again be bombarded, threat of invasion revived, and now we start 1943 under conditions I would never have dared to hope. Russia has held. Egypt, for the present, is safe. There is a hope of clearing North Africa of Germans in the near future. The entire war had changed for the Allies, for the whole world, and for the future of mankind. For every one of you watching now.
That's a thing, man. It's like, a lot of people say that Hitler was losing his mind. He was getting back into a corner, and he was just totally not managing his logistics and his forces correctly. And you know,
now, Joachim, you said that the lyrics to Stalingrad were inspired by a Russian soldier's diary.
Yes. Was a bit of a mess, actually, that one. I read all the books I could get my hands on. I watched all the movies. I even went through Anthony Beevor's, you know, big pile.
All of his books are big piles.
That's true. And I didn't know where to start, actually.
Okay.
Sitting there trying to come up with the lyrics. There was so much info, but yet there was nothing there that got the juices flowing, I guess.
That really put it down concisely.
No, there's too much. You can't see the forest because of the trees, you know.
Ah, see? Metaphors.
Anyway, I ended up with finding a translation of a Russian soldier's diary. It wasn't complete. It was just a few pages that had been translated and found. And I thought that those were more inspiring than all the books and all the movies I read.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I couldn't have done it without having read all of those books and watched all of those movies.
Yeah.
Because obviously that info can be used when I'm writing the lyrics.
Did you have a favorite book or a favorite movie that you would recommend?
On Stalingrad,
Uh-huh.
anything but Anthony Beevor's big book. It's amazing, but it's so boring.
Now, I use Anthony Beevor for the World War II in Real Time channel. I use him as one of my sources, and everything he writes is massive. And there's a trick. Don't tell Anthony Beevor I said this. But there's a trick. You read one page and go, that's very interesting, and then you skip 2 pages and read the next page, and you basically get the entire story without having to read the whole thing. I just said that on camera, so somebody is going to tell Anthony Beevor.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
But
funny.
listen, Per, you said you were talking about a story about the band in Stalingrad and not just the lyrics in the song.
Yeah. I mean, today the city is not Stalingrad.
No.
It's Volgograd.
Right.
But we had the opportunity to play in Stalingrad because of the 70 years anniversary of the battle.
Okay.
So there was this promoter who organized an event.
Yeah.
However, some local politician thought that Sabaton was a bad idea. There
Local
are sometimes,
politicians, yeah.
especially in the old days, there were more controversies around the band.
Okay.
And this local politician had the idea that Sabaton is not coming there to celebrate the 70 years anniversary of Stalingrad. Sabaton is coming there to make a statement and burn the Russian flag on the stage.
He decided
Wow.
that all by himself.
Yeah, we were actually not allowed to enter the country due
Really?
to bans on our passports. I mean, I did write a letter, a response letter to this, which was a public letter which was published in newspapers.
In Russia.
In Russia,
Okay.
yes. Where I stated that Sabaton is a non-political band. We are not there to make a political statement. We are there to perform a show for our fans. We are honored to be part of the 70 years
sure.
anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad. So the passport ban was lifted,
Okay.
but we never were able to do that specific show.
Oh, that's a shame. But you did make it to Arlanda Airport, though.
Yes.
That's the Stockholm Airport. So
Here we go.
here's a
with
fun little story.
With the stupidest.
It's not
weird
stupid. This is a
story.
great story.
Okay, the band is not allowed to enter Russia,
Right.
but my passport is lifted earlier
Okay.
in order to go to Stalingrad to meet with media
Okay.
and explain the story. At this point, on the behalf of the promoter, I'm in business class flying.
Okay, cool.
There's 2 people in the business class. It's me and it's the Swedish artist Dr. Alban.
Dr. Alban. That's okay.
And
I guess we're not allowed to use a clip of Dr. Alban's music. No, that's
Sing
a shame.
hallelujah!
There we go.
there we go.
You and Dr. Alban. That's a weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we board the plane. We're sitting there like, okay, fair enough. We're gonna go to Russia, and I'm changing plane in Moscow and going to Stalingrad.
Right.
The plane is broken.
Okay. Is it Aeroflot?
It's an Aeroflot flight. and it's
Sorry,
broken.
sorry, Russia, but it's broken. It's impossible. It's broken. Kaput. Okay.
Okay, so we're on the plane,
Yeah.
and they come to us and they say, "Hey, the plane is broken. You have to leave, and you
Okay.
will get a new flight."
Okay.
So they only take us two. The rest
Okay.
of the people are sitting still in the plane.
In the broken plane.
In the broken plane. And they take me and Dr. Alban, and we get new flight tickets for the next flight.
Okay.
And then they give us a table at O'Leary's in...
So in Terminal 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You can't miss the O'Leary's in Terminal 5 at Orlando Airport.
I'm sitting there with Dr. Alban, and he's having a long discussion talking to the Russian promoter, because obviously he's playing a show that night
Right. Oh,
in
wow.
Moscow. And he is ensuring that he will arrive, and he wants to play the show late night,
Okay.
even though it's going to be very late, because our flight is going to leave at like 2 o'clock in the night. And we are...
Oh, wow, that late.
Yeah, and we're skipping time, so he's going to land at 4 or something, and he wants to go on stage very late.
So he's going to go, he's going to go get there at like 4 in the morning, and he wants to go on stage at like 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he says the show is still on, and he has some kind of argument with the
That's
promoter.
crazy. I don't think anyone's going to go to that show.
And,
So
and
die-hard
at some
fans.
point, Dr. Alban is making this statement very loud as he is. I wish the Nazis won World War II, so there would be some kind of... you guys would have some manners.
Wow.
And I'm sitting at
That's
the table
funny.
next to him, and
That's not
trying
funny,
to
but it's funny, you know?
kind of disappear.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, because there's a crowd around you guys, right?
There's a crowd, it's full
Oh my
packed,
god.
O'Leary's and
Just
everybody's
full on
looking
Homer
at
Simpson into the bush.
Well, Dr. Alban, if you're out there, I really hope that you made that show. Actually,
And thank you for the dinner.
I would see a Dr. Alban show at 5 in the morning. I think that would be really fun. If you do another one, we'll all go, right?
I go.
We're all going. You do another 5 a.m. show, and is it in Moscow?
Yeah.
Who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, we're all going. That's our
Next
promise.
time in Moscow, we're there.
Okay, well, thank you guys for today. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Stalingrad, but we will see you next time on Sabaton History.
Hey. Love this song.
So if you subscribe and if you become a patron, you have the chance to get our old Sabaton albums with in-this comments talking about the historical background of each song, similar to this video, but in an audio format. Really beautiful, really nicely done.
That's nice.
And that's all for today. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Love it. All right. Okay. That was pretty cool. That was actually a fun little story about the airport and stuff at the end there. These guys are really cool. They're kind of fun, you know, just to hear them hang out and stuff. That's why I love these videos. One of the reasons I love these videos. But yeah, Stalingrad is, that was like the nail in the coffin, right? If I remember correctly. It's a huge example of how mismanaged the Axis forces were, you know. Where the I honestly believe, I'm not a historian and I'm not a military strategist or anything, but I feel like from what I've heard that the Nazis probably had a good chance of winning that war if they had made the right decisions in managing it, like the later half, you know, the latter half, I should say. Yeah, that was crazy, you know. It's like it's just one of those stories about just being held back, you know, being held off. But it's but the thing about this, like the big German force, like you're fighting for country and glory, yada yada yada, and your Führer is letting everyone like get disease and starve and cutting back their rations and just letting them just freeze and starve and die in the winter. Like it's like no wonder people were deserting and giving up and stuff. You know, it's like you're losing faith in your leadership. You know, it's crazy. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this reaction, like, comment, subscribe if you feel so inclined. Follow me on all my social medias, join my Discord, follow me on Twitch. Everything I do is down in the description. Come hang out. Until next time, guys, I've been Count Richard Quick, and I hope you have a seismic day.